Florida's independent Governor Charlie Crist taking aim at offshore drilling today. The governor saying, and I'm quoting now, "We need to stop offshore oil drilling in Florida. I'd like to frankly have a special session to ban it in the Sunshine State." Reaction now from his Republican opponent in the Florida Senate race, Marco Rubio. By the way, we invited the governor and the Democrat in the race, Kendrick Meek, to appear on the show. We got no response from them. Mr. Rubio, welcome to the program. Would you join this attempted ban on offshore drilling?
Offshore drilling is already banned in Florida's waters, so I'm not quite sure what he's trying to ban, and I'm not sure what he's trying to stop, because drilling on Florida's territorial waters is already illegal by Florida law. So having a special session to pass a ban is nothing but a political stunt. It's already banned.
Well, it might extend the ban. I mean, it would be a ban. It sounds like, and I've not seen the details, but it sounds like it will be a much broader-based ban on drilling anywhere near the Florida coastline, anywhere out into the Gulf. Would you support that?
Well, the Florida law can't do that. The only thing Florida has jurisdiction over is its own waters, and it's already illegal to drill anywhere in its own waters by state law. So I think what he's saying is he's trying to ban something that's already illegal.
Then I'm asking in principle, how do you stand on the idea of banning oil drilling offshore, whether the state of Florida can do it or not? How do you feel about it?
Well, first of all, I think that we have to approach it as differently. We have to look at it and say, okay, America needs to develop alternatives to petroleum. Everyone agrees with that. Let's lead the world in electric cars and in fuel cell powered cars, etc. Let's do that. But what about the interim? What about the time that it takes to develop that? We and the rest of the world are going to be using petroleum. We need it. That's what fuels our economy. That's just the reality. So then we have a choice to make. Do we want to import more of it, or do we want to domestically produce more of it? And by the way, importing carries its own dangers. It carries national security dangers. It carries economic dangers. It also carries the danger of tankers, because tankers run aground and tankers leak. In fact, they're historically much more dangerous than drilling. The bottom line is that America has to produce more energy of its own, and drilling may have to be a part of that, so long as it can be done safely.
Governor Crist has gained ground since the tar oil started to haul up on the shores there of Florida. He has gained ground. He's out front, in front of the cameras every single day on this issue. He is, I hesitate to say, but he is winning politically on this issue, especially by calling for this offshore ban. Now, how do you attack that? How do you come back on that?
Well, first of all, I don't think this oil spill should be the opportunity for political gain by anybody. I'm not quite sure I agree that that there has been gain. But that being said, I think that the people who need to win here are the people of our state and of our country. And what we need are leadership at the state level that will call on the White House to do a competent job of dealing with this. If you talk to local elected officials in Northwest Florida, they will tell you that the bureaucracy they are dealing with in order to do their jobs in dealing with this is monstrous. And what they're looking for is a voice that will stand up to the federal government and say, enough is enough. Get out of our way and let us do our job. Just provide us the resources. We're not getting that in Florida the way they're getting it in Louisiana and Mississippi for political reasons.
Okay. Let me ask you about President Obama. He's come back from the Toronto meetings with world leaders, and he's talking about spending more money as opposed to the Europeans who want austerity. I'm going to run a quick soundbite from the president. Essentially, he's calling your bluff and other Republicans. Just listen to this for a second.
Next year, when I start presenting some very difficult choices to the country, I hope some of these folks who are hollering about deficits and debt step up, because I'm calling their bluff.
Well, I hesitate to say, but you, sir, have been hollering about deficits and debt. Will you step up now, not next year, but now, and do something about spending and the deficits now? Would you do that?
Well, first of all, it's ironic that Europe is now lecturing America about spending. It's pretty sad. But the other thing I would say to you about it is that we've been talking about this throughout our campaign. And if by difficult measures the president's talking about a value-added tax or some other new revenue source for America that will make it even harder to grow businesses, we're not going to be for that. We shouldn't be for that. We have to make some tough choices. They should have started making them a long time ago. It's called entitlement reform. It's reforming our budgetary process so that there aren't any more earmarks, so that we have a realistic, real-world accounting of how much government is spending. Absolutely.
It is a very tough position for you to take, isn't it? I mean, this is tough stuff indeed, to call for some kind of cutting back on entitlement programs, and that's the bottom line here. And to do it now,
well, what I'm calling
that's a tough one.
Yeah. Well, what I'm calling for is to reform those entitlement programs. I don't think we should cut anything for people that are currently on the system. And the only way we're going to prevent future cuts to people that are on Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid is for us to make the reforms that need to be made right now for people of my generation. I've been talking about the entire campaign. Look, here's very simple. 40 cents of every dollar being spent by the federal government is being borrowed from my children. I think that's outrageous. We have to stop doing that.
You know, are you coverage of the events in Toronto over the weekend? What caught my eye were those demonstrations. I mean, the violence in the streets of Toronto. I think we're going to run. Yeah, look at this. I mean, running riot in the streets of Toronto. I'm inclined to think, look at the mainstream media and how they covered that violence and how they covered peaceful Tea Party meetings. I mean, there was such a direct contrast from one to the other. You have any comment on that?
You know, I haven't seen some of that footage. I can't see it now in the studio anyway. I've long given up trying to get mainstream media to accurately represent what fiscal conservatism means in America. It means the mainstream position in our country. Most Americans understand, I think the vast majority, that our government cannot continue to spend more money than it takes in and us be able to maintain the levels of prosperity and freedom that we as Americans are used to.
I guess what I'm getting at is that when the Tea Party meetings were held, the slightest offensive sign, the mainstream media jumped all over it and said, look at what those Republicans are doing. Now you get the violence on the streets of Toronto, and it was violent, 500 plus arrests, and nobody is making the connection between President Obama demonizing businesses and the way those demonstrators demonized and attacked businesses. I mean, it just seems like such a contradiction to me.
Well, again, I think that's you find too much of that today in the mainstream media here in our country. But the bottom line is that I think that there are members of this administration that do not support America's free enterprise system. They want America to embrace a model more like that which you see now in Western Europe, and you see how well that's turned out in Western Europe. And unfortunately, some of these images you're now seeing, maybe not the violence, hopefully, but the protests are going to be part of our future if we don't undertake serious reforms now that prevent the problem from getting worse.